Hey guys, just a quick note from us. We really appreciate all the support and all the well wishes we've had since we launched the Fraser Golf Institute channel. But the number one way in which you can support us is by subscribing to the channel. Like the videos, comment in the videos, let the algorithms, let YouTube know that this is a channel that you're really enjoying. Currently, about 60% of the audience, the viewers on each video are not subscribers. It would mean the world to us if you subscribed to the channel and you liked and commented in the videos. It lets people know that Fraser Golf Institute is a channel that should be viewed on YouTube. That would help us out, and we guarantee we'll bring the best content that we possibly can to you guys. Enjoy today's video.
If you're playing twice a week in the summer, I'm probably going to say maybe you could work out once or twice a week on top of that, max. Like, that's it. Everything else, like, you can stretch at home, you can do whatever, you can thumper, roll, sauna, ice baths, awesome. Yeah. There's probably more investment outside of that. Everything recovers when we sleep. Everything. I do not care what your supplements you take in, what needles you're sticking in your body, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yep. If you're not sleeping, you are not healing. And I'm talking on a global scale. Your brain, your organs, your skin, everything, the gut, everything's healing through that circadian cycle, that 10-6.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Golf Asylum Podcast. Thank you so much to all of you who have watched, listened to our first couple of episodes. To say we were overwhelmed by the support and kind wishes from all of you would be a complete understatement. So on behalf of myself, Cody and Casey, our team, a huge thank you to all of you who have supported us thus far. Today, I've got a really special guest for you, a good, dear friend of mine, Carl Weston. Carl and I go back... How long did we meet? Probably 6-7 years ago?
Oh, at least.
Maybe more.
Probably long. Well, I'm trying to think now. I've been out here this way for 5. It's got to be longer than that. It's got to be 8 years.
It was the early TXG days up at Scarsdale, up in North York.
Very early TXG. How long ago was that for you?
We were up there from 2017.
Yeah,
so it would have been right around that time.
Then. Yeah.
So Carl and I date back to then. 2 non-native Canadians, 2 accents in the room. And Carl's a really special individual in many different ways. I'll blow your trumpet for you because you would never do it for yourself. But we first met on a sort of a journey I was trying to kind of embark on more for my golf game and sort of trying to get a bit stronger and more sort of healthy is kind of an interest I have. But once we got to kind of know each other and sort of I got to learn more about you, I got to learn about the full depth of what it is you do. And it's so much more than just, general health and, or sort of strength and conditioning type work. So, love it if we can just start with you, kind of fill us in a little bit about you, your background, and the work you do for the Chek Institute.
Sure. So it's
a lot to unpack here.
It's a smorgasbord of what we do. The health system is very holistic, as you know. It's not, we don't approach the body from the exercise standpoint. We approach it from the nutrition, the mindset, the sleep, the rest, the recovery, the movement is ultimately the last part of the way that we approach the body. I still say in this world, I've been 25 years in the industry, started out in like the physio rehab world. Was living and working in England at the time, and then transitioned to Bermuda, or like kind of been all around the world, like from Australia and all the way around, full circle right now. But started in the physio training realm of working with a lot of the premiership teams through a rehab company called Sporting Chance and a health clinic called Champneys. Kind of got bored of the industry a little bit then and was ready to leave. And I was actually, the crazy side of the story there, I was ready to go to Sri Lanka and work on an elephant farm. If I was going to do 6 months on this elephant farm, and I got this chance to go to Bermuda and run a health spot down in Bermuda. And I was like, I'm doing it.
Like a high end, somewhere where the
very high, like just the money in Bermuda is insane. Like my clients' houses were renting at $40,000 a month, US. Yeah. Type money, flying in and out to work for 2 days and then flying back to like the Hamptons and places like that. And then when I was living in Bermuda, just before that, I was exposed to Paul and I was exposed to the Chek system. And, this is going back about 17, 18 years. And I signed up and did his first course, and I walked out of that course like I've just learned more in that 1 week than what I'd learned in all my degrees. You know, coming from like my sports science background and the education of my master's, I was like, hold on, I've just learned more in 5 days from this one guy than what I've learned in all my previous years of education. I'm like, I need to study with this guy.
I mean, and you and I are going to probably jump around a little bit here. We've got some structure to the podcast today, but we will jump around a little bit. But we're talking about the Chek Institute. Paul Chek is a leader in the health and wellness world, has been for probably the best part of, has it been as much as 30 years?
Easily 30 years.
Maybe even more.
Yeah.
And this is where I believe there are no accidents in life. I don't believe there's anything in this that isn't meant to be. And when you and I met, it felt like you were one of the people, Carl, I met, and I'm like, yeah, I was supposed to meet Carl. This was meant to happen, you know. And I knew that because when I first turned pro, living in the west coast of Scotland, the gym I worked out at, a really good friend of mine, he was my hairdresser and he was my like PT, my trainer, and the nicest guy in the world. And he ended up being my caddy for a little while as well. He was a kind of Swiss Army knife. He flew to San Diego and came back with this qualification for a sort of biomechanics course with the Chek Institute. And this was like probably when Paul would have done that, early 2000s. When he would have done the golf biomechanics. I
mean, we've been teaching, the golf biomechanics was one of his earliest kind of offshoots of his main.
So it maybe had been around for a little while even before that. So Jim went and done that. Jim Malloy, give him a shout out. Just honestly, some of the best nights out I've ever had with this guy. And you know, he came back and just raving about this, the Chek Institute, it's this, it's that, this is the future, you know. So he was basically going to take on 2 clients to train for free and get his way around the biomechanics course. And so I've known about I've been talking and talking up the Chek Institute for the best part of 20 years. And a lot of people still maybe don't know, maybe more so now. But when I used to talk about it back in the day, people were like, never heard, especially in Scotland.
It's not as well known as it needs to be.
Right.
He's still sought as one of the leading
absolutely
health pioneers. Like he just, this is a couple of years ago now, in the Muscle and Fitness magazine, he just missed out on being the most influential guy. And he lost to none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
Like to be put on that same podium as someone is, and again, Arnold he's known through his acting more so probably than his early years of his bodybuilding years.
Yeah.
But he came second to him in the most influential people in the health and fitness.
That's incredible.
Field. You know, he is just one of those minds that will be forever known.
Yeah.
It's just, I still think it'll become one of the biggest names in the world. I just think it's at what point,
you know? Absolutely. So that was when you and I obviously met, and you know, you've been one of Paul's core team members, the pillars of his whole Chek Institute for a number of years. And when we first met, and you were telling me, you know, I kind of cover the sort of Northeast and all these different kind of parts of North America, and that's your role, is really to be integral to the whole company.
Yeah, so part of the faculty, you know, trying to think how many faculty there are. I'm the only one in Canada, right. So I cover all of Canada and cover the US with that, and then there's Ashley and Nicole and Angie in the US. There's about 3 in England, and then there is 1 in New Zealand and 3 in Australia. Wow. And 1, I think, in Denmark or Norway now. I forget where Soren is, but we've got like a faculty around the world. But yeah, I've been teaching now I'm into my 8th, maybe going into my 9th year. Right. I think there's Matt, Susie, and Asher that have been teaching for a little bit longer than me. And a lot of the old faculty are gone and out with the old and in with the new. And I'm blessed to be there, because some of my colleagues, you know, are just geniuses in this world, and I get access to, I think, some of the smartest people on the planet.
You know, you talk about individuals and individual knowledge and the skill set people have. It is amazing what can be done, or the sort of information that can be learned when you put geniuses or, smart people together. And I talk about it in our industry, the golf industry. I talk about it like we're always trying to create the Avenger team, because like Iron Man's great and the Hulk is great, but when you put them all together, when they're unstoppable, and that's what the way you can obviously with the faculty, Paul's kind of tried to put, a team of people together that everyone has different strengths and they're going to bring different things to the table. And collectively, it's an unstoppable force.
Well, I mean, that's how Paul created his education system. Wow. He went around the world learning from the best of the best.
Yeah.
Whoever's name was thrown at him, he would read books, he would book time with them, he would work with them. And when you're going through his early education materials, he names some of the bigger names that are equally as big as him, if not bigger in their path. Charles Poliquin was one of his big references.
Of course, yeah.
Who, like the late Charles Poliquin, he was probably the pinnacle of the athletic training, but he missed a very integral part to his education. And it's the one part that Paul's become really renowned for, which is the more holistic side of things. It's not just the training and the supplements that you take in. It's every other thing. And, but he references all these people, like he's worked with the best of the best over the last 40, 50 years. And he put it into his own education system and created this, as very deep, very in-depth, very broad spectrum of education. And we really do take a wide stance when we approach the body.
I think back to those days and when Jim first came back to talk about the Chek Institute, and I look back at it now and I went, he was absolutely doing the right thing. He was just too early. Because it never popped for him, and he ended up going back and doing scientific back, and he done all of Paul's a bunch of Paul's other courses, but he ended up going more into the rehab side of the Chek Institute, because I don't think golfers were really ready to acknowledge the value of biomechanics in the early 2000s. You could see signs of it, obviously, in the way people were talking about maybe how Tiger was training but they would reference like Gary Player, they could name the one-off people who were training that way. Today, everyone in golf at the high level trains. Yeah,
they've all got trainers and physios and mind coaches.
Yeah, and you look at what they do, they're doing stuff you might not expect them to be doing, where they're trying to be strong, and we'll get into that a little bit today, is maybe in places you're like, how does that improve the golf swing or strengthen the sort of the foundation of the golfer. But let's kind of talk a little bit about sort of the holistic approach. We created the Fraser Golf Institute under 6 pillars of performance, and I love the holistic approach to anything because improvement never comes from one place. It does come from a multitude of angles that we're going to look at things at. We know a little bit about golf fitness, I think. Now I think people are aware of the value of the core and things like that. What does it look like from your perspective, Carl, from a wellness perspective in golf? What does that look like?
Good question.
For a golfer specifically.
From the golf side, I think there's 2 sides of the golf world. There's the fun side of the golf world, like your weekend warrior type thing. And then there's your people that actually legitimately take it probably a little bit more serious. Yeah. And what I mean by that, there's the people that are probably a little bit more healthier Monday through Friday and actually probably do work out and have some form of training practice around improving their golf game. And then there's like the weekend guys that are just out with their mates, drinking their beers, getting 18 and are probably taking 4 hours away from the stress at home.
Yeah.
So there's those 2 paradigms that I see from the golf world, but it's moving in a phenomenal direction. Like you said, everything's moving in a better direction and becoming a little bit more holistic. I think the golf world is changing rapidly, and they are seeing the longevity. I see it's a sport that you could probably play at a very high level, a lot older than any other sport really in the world. Like I don't see any reason why you couldn't be at a top level into your 40s and 50s.
100%.
Where let's speak about the American and the Canadian sports. Hockey, football, and basketball. You've got a 4-5 year term, and their bodies are broken at the end of it. You know, they're a little bit more used for a negative side. They're more like pawns on a bigger playing field. But golf's there's a longevity to golf, you know, and I think that's what attracts a lot of people, because it really is something that you can really play into the end of years. And I've got clients, and I think you know probably some of my clients that are avid golfers, and they're in their 70s now. You know, they're in their mid 70s and they're still training. But some of those guys will not share my contacts with their friends.
Yeah.
Because I'm like their golden goose, because they know the stretching, the importance of the stretching and the mobility.
Yeah.
They know the importance of the diet. They know the importance of rest and recovery. And, you know, and you'll know as well, and as all of your listeners will know, you beat yourself up in the gym, your golf game is going to tank the next day.
It absolutely. Mine does. Mine absolutely tanked. That's been a big issue for me, to be honest, with the consistency or inconsistency of my workouts. Is I kind of have regular, so we film on a Monday. It was always a Monday. Now it's maybe a couple of days a week. I would have a game of golf with the boys in the summer. I would practice. And it was like every time I go and have those types of workouts, I'm like, oh, I'm sore. I'm hitting it like crap. You know, nothing's good at what I'm doing. And, you know, I look at it like, it always put me off, you know, the sort of, and I would never get beyond the point where your body, recovers and it adjusts to the load and things like that. I would always suffer so much for it. And then within 2 weeks, I was back off the consistency train.
And that's where, you know, we can get into this. That's where the training for golf paradigm probably needs a little bit of attention. Yeah. Because let's speak to the people 35 and over. Mm-hmm. Early 20s, you're probably going to ego and muscle through it, and you're just going to you're a little bit more versatile to the pain and the discomfort. But for those 35 and over, you're not going to be training the day before you want to go out and play your best golf game. Yep. You know, like, that's the day where I'm going to be like, no, you probably do a little bit of light stretching, mobilization, maybe have a massage, make sure your nutrition's dialed in and you bang on. And then you go out and you probably have the best game of your life. Having a workout, pre-golf game, specifically a heavy loaded workout, you know, if you're lifting heavy weights, that's going to ultimately tear the muscles, have that DOMS, that muscle soreness reaction, the repair recovery after that, which is a 24, 48-hour period, your game's going to struggle because your muscles are going to be.
And how does your nervous system deal with that as well? Because it takes a huge load when you lift like that, and obviously you've got to try and, you know, recover it that way as well.
Depends how you're training. Yeah, like the load on the nervous system really depends on the type of program. If you're lifting heavy weights, really high nervous system load. Yeah, you know, like you know, if you work in legs and you walk out of a heavy leg session, legs are trembling. Yeah. Like, you're kind of walking out to the car park, you don't even know where you've parked your car, your nervous system shot. That's one way of really draining the nervous system. The other way is using stability stuff. You know, all the funky stuff that people see online, you know, like the balancing, I got the stupid stuff. Because you do too much of that, you're just trashing the nervous system, and then the next day, that's even longer recovery than the actual muscle recovery. So you've got to go light. If you're going to work out like the day before, it'd be a really light workout. You know, I'd be talking like body weight, maybe a little bit more calisthenic, TRX type workout.
Almost like a priming session. How you prime yourself get that just to, you know,
body lubed up. And again, I don't know what the average age of your listeners is. I don't know if you know, but I talk to the over 35s because the body changes and it slows down, man. It
does.
You know, my big passion is jiu-jitsu these days. And, you know, I'm 44 and I try and train 4 or 5 days a week. But on those days when I'm not training, I'm like, what does my body need today? And it's red light, it's roller, it's the thumper, stretching. Maybe in the summertime, specifically more if I can get out and do a kettlebell workout in the sun. Yeah, I will.
That's great.
But you've really got to take those days off. And I know it's different with the golf because not everyone's golfing every day. But I would say to the golfing community, like if you're playing on a weekday or a weekend day, like the day before, you don't work out. Yeah. Stretch and moves, like hydrate yourself as much as you can. You want your body moving like it's a well-oiled machine. So plenty of hydration, water, not beer, not wine.
We chatted about that recently. I thought you made some really good points about people who drink in the golf course who get injured.
Yeah, it's the worst thing you can do. I mean, golf's one of the most explosive sports out there. I think it's considered more explosive than baseball. Could just be the repetition of the amount of swings that you're doing, like all the practice shots that you do, the actual shots you do, the speed and the torque and the torque through the body is phenomenal. You do that on an inflamed system. Like it's for someone that has the anatomy and physiology knowledge and the impact on the body, drinking and doing that, you're a back injury waiting to happen, you know, or a strain waiting to happen, you know, because the muscle system will try and overload wherever there's a weakness in the body. But you put inflammatory in that core area, which will come from any alcoholic drink, creates inflammation. Then you put that rotation through the spine. You're a beer away from blowing your back out and losing a summer of golf.
Yeah.
And, you know, we live in Canada, so the golf season's really short. We maybe April through.
Precious time.
Yeah, April through November if we're lucky.
If we're lucky, yeah. I mean, I always consider it, I really consider it like golf season starts May 1.
Yeah.
Pretty much May 1, and it'll pretty much seriously end mid-October.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is precious time. And, you know, you kind of walk the line of being that kind of party pooper, don't you? Of like, oh, you know, I have a few beers because I'm blowing off the steam from the week and, you know, it's been a tough one. But it's like, to your point, sure, but could you do that after you play?
Do it after.
Can you while you play? And that's an interesting thing. When I first moved over here, and playing golf with guys, they'd load up the cart with beers and stuff like that. And I would say to them, like, are you going to, like, is that for after the round or is this all during the round? They're like, this is the front nine. And I'd be like, all right, this is interesting. Because back home in Scotland, and I'd say the UK in general, there might be the odd exception. People don't drink in the course.
Oh, really?
At all.
I'm very surprised at that.
Yeah, it is like you.
So is it an American thing then?
Very North American. Canadian. Very, very, very. So you'll sort of play, then you'll have as many as you want.
Clubhouse.
Yeah. And that's the social element. That's where you kind of get together with the boys, you know, all the tea times that are going on round about. Everyone will get together in the clubhouse afterwards, maybe watch the football scores on a Saturday, whatever it is, but they won't drink in the course.
I really didn't know that.
Yeah. And it seems to be much more of a culture here than it is back in the home of golf.
It's a bad culture.
It's a bad one in many ways, but, you know, I always walk the line of, listen, you know, people will make their own decisions, obviously, but whether that's, you know, injury, whether that's the ride home afterwards and you're 8 beers deep, probably not ideal. That could be its own podcast in itself. What are some of the key mistakes or assumptions we golfers make about playing golf in our peak state, or what it takes to be in a peak state to play the game? What do you think people kind of assume they need to do versus what they actually need to do?
I think is what a lot of people don't take into consideration is golf is an endurance sport.
Yeah.
You know, and like, yeah, you're only hitting a ball like actually as few times as you actually can to play the game, but there's a lot of prep around that. But it's an endurance sport. Like, the average golf game is 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's under my understanding that the average person will be 4 hours. The better guys will be a lot quicker than that. Beginners might even be a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
I think the average 18's 4 hours for the average person. That's not a short sport.
Yeah.
You know, like a jiu-jitsu competition, if you're actually competing, it's a 6-minute round.
Yeah.
You might have 2, 3, 4 of those. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's like an 18-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute round as opposed to 4 hours. So taking into consideration, it's an endurance sport. No one's training for endurance. Yeah. Everyone's going in the gym, smashing these 45-minute hit workouts. So I think the training paradigm's a little bit wrong with that. I think they put too much emphasis on strength and not enough emphasis on mobility. I think way more emphasis needs to be put on diet.
Yeah.
Because, like we just said, that anyone with a bigger belly, you know, like the beer belly type thing, the biomechanics that plays on the role of the spine, it's gone. Yeah. That the support mechanism of the spine is no longer functioning at 100. You put all that torque into a spine, you want it at 100. You want it dialed up at 120 if you can get it there. Like, you want it to be working. And that's not there with golf.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most interesting things about golf, and we've dabbled in it a little bit in some of So we're doing a series with Casey on sort of breaking 90, right? So he's kind of shoots in around between 90 and 100 when he plays. And I know that we've not got you in the course. You've not broken 90 yet, right? So we just started this series. And one of the things we've talked about is golf is kind of, you can split it up into segments, right? You've got the driving portion, which is very much explosive. So what state do you need to be in to drive it optimally? What state do you need to be in to putt optimally, and have that clarity of mind and, all that sort of different stuff. And it's, I use, the sort of whoop band, and we've been experimenting with some stuff, trying to sort of prime the nervous system so you're a little bit more fight or flight when it comes to the on the tee stuff. So you can be a little, raise the heart rate. What's optimal? Is it between kind of 110 and 130 where your system's a little bit more ready to go? And then when you get on the green, you do a little bit more your breathing, whether it's box breathing, whatever you're comfortable with. But we like that heart rate to come down a little bit. You're much more mindful. You're much more sort of observant of the line. You're maybe a little bit more in tune with your senses so you can feel the different gradient on the green and stuff like that. But I think the ability to change mindset or change state as you go round is maybe something that's not talked about enough in golf.
It's an interesting way to think about it, because you think of the explosive, the speed and the power that's going through the big drive.
Yeah.
You want to be warm when you're doing that, and you don't want cold muscles moving as fast as they can around the spine.
I mean, that interval of time is so short when it comes to hit. The downswing lasts less than a second, and for you to turn the throttle on and go full afterburners in under a second from 0 to up to 120 miles an hour in less than a second. When we talk about impact on the body, I mean the physical.
Well, this is where golf's interesting, because when you look at this, that swing, the driving swing off the tee swing, that's power training.
Yep.
That's your Olympic lifting type models of moving the body under as fast as you can and with as much speed as you can. Yeah. Like the Olympic lifters move around a weight, but you guys are moving around the torso.
Yeah.
And then you've got the endurance component. So golfers really have to hit all pillars of training. Honestly, when you look at it to break down, you probably put them in the same training paradigm as what you would like a UFC fighter.
Right.
That they need all elements, like although they're 35 minutes and at 30 minutes, whatever it would be considerably short than 4 hours.
Yep.
But 30 minutes at 30 minutes at full gas.
Yep.
That's a lot. So when you're looking at the golf, I was just thinking as you were saying, I'm like, you kind of need to drag a spinning bike around with you so you can just jump and get the blood and the heart rate flying to keep that core temperature up and the muscles able to go and smash that ball as far as they can.
Yeah. I know this from when I was doing some speed training. If I go from, I'll do everything in sets of 5. I'll hit 5. And then I'll take a breather for 60 to 90 seconds. And then I'll do 5 explosive vertical jumps, right? So I'll just try and prime my body, because obviously one of the main power sources in the golf swing is our vertical motion or vertical thrust. And the amount of speed I see increase after I've done those 5 explosive vertical jumps. And I know my heart rates went up. I know the muscles have all sort of activated, glutes are going, your core is much more sort of engaged. And it's amazing. How do we replicate that? Because you're not going to see people on the tee box doing vertical jumps. Although, would people do it if they thought, it could give them 10 yards?
Would it not?
I mean, it could. It absolutely could.
Yeah.
For every 10 yards, we were talking about every mile an hour is 2.7 yards. So if we thought you could get 4 miles an hour and you'd a force carry over a creek or a bunker or something like that, and you can only get to those elevated speeds. I mean, you do wonder if you'll ever get to where people prime themselves on the tee for what they're about to do, right? Because it's hard to flip that switch on and off. I really struggle with that. The boys will tell you, I mean, my training speed in the bay after an hour worth of filming, I can sit at 115 miles an hour with the driver. I go on the golf course, I'm 106.
So it shows that
really, really shows.
I mean, apply that to anyone. Who wouldn't want to have an extra
Absolutely.
40 miles on that drive.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically 25 yards I give up on the golf course from in the bay. And when we were testing, golfers, our audience, sees it. Like, why do you not hit it as far in the course? I'm like, I wish I knew. I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to.
Well, your body's primed at that point.
It is.
Movement creates the synovial fluid. It gets the muscles limber. It gets the muscles functioning and working better. I'd love to see as well if you're a little bit more aware of the body as well at that point. You walk on a course cold.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say this to all of your listeners. Correcting biomechanics through a biomechanical assessment and standing and posturing right, I think that alone would add 30 to 50 yards to the. I'm not talking about your pro golfers that have got the trainers things. The average, you run-of-the-mill golfer, anyone playing on the Toronto golf courses.
Couldn't agree more.
I think with a proper biomechanical spinal alignment, anywhere from 30, I'm going to probably say out to 100 yards because there's a lot of bad postures out there. Put on top of that proper training and proper warm-up. It's one of those things that, you think about it, people do not warm up for golf, but they're out there playing for 4 hours. Why are they not warming up?
I think it might have been one of the first episodes we done in the Fraser Golf Institute was basically how to practice. And a big part of that is don't walk in the bay and start hitting balls, especially not with the driver, making the big swings. You've got to work into it. There's a reason in F1 they do that warm-up lap. It's not like they ask even these cars, or drivers to go at full speed straight off the gate. They give them a little bit of time to kind of get up to speed. And golf's such a unique sport in that way. I heard a great one to your point, and I love what you said about it's one of the only sports, it might be the only sport that as you get older, you can still physically compete. Really, if you take, measures into your own hands, you don't have to have that decline. There was a Swedish golfer, Robert Karlsson, and I was listening to his golf coach and his, I guess he'd be speed coach, but a biomechanics specialist, Sasha McKenzie, talking about it. And his name's Robert Karlsson. He was one of the best European players, probably around 2005 to 2010, around that era. And he was always relatively long, had a big, tall Swede, 6'5". He swung the club about 110 miles an hour. He's now, at the age of 52, swinging the club at 122 miles an hour at 52. So he was in his prime 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and he's now increased speed as he's now playing on the Champions Tour, and they're actually saying the courses have gotten relatively too short for him.
Oh, wow.
The places he's hitting the ball into, the fairway runs out and things like that. So they're setting the courses up for most of the players who are declining in speed and distance, and he's actually hitting it a little bit too far in some cases. So what a unique opportunity to play a game that gives you the ability to, for half a century, you can continue to improve physically.
I think we're in a new world with that right now. I think before there was no real improvement in golf, was there, for a long time? With the advancement of clubs and drive distance,
we're still arguably at that same spot. I think they're still saying there hasn't been an average handicap reduction in years and years.
I wonder if that'll change in the next decade with the advancements of science and nutrition and health. We're in a new world when it comes to health and wellness, especially with this format of education. It's better than probably most universities out there now. The information you can get off podcasts, the likes of Huberman Lab, Paul, all these people out there putting great content out, exposing people to all these new modalities and ways of training and recovering. I wonder if this next range of kids coming through will be like the new paradigm shift in what golf can look like.
Yeah. I think you're right in that. We are seeing that. We're seeing players, when Tiger first came out, he was a phenomenon. He was truly a one-off and unique. It's now almost like every kid coming out of college is that level of sort of explosive speed. And it's like, is it just a case of over time that the floor will raise and kind of, people will adopt these training methods and, fitness and golf equipment and do all, the way to train better with a golf instructor using force plates and technology to analyze movement.
It's maybe it's going to go a little bit more. It's probably going to go a little bit like Formula One, where the machines can only take you so far. Right. Like maybe we're at that peak with the clubs and the balls. I'm sure there's a degree. I'm sure there's physicists out there that can tell you the speed of what you swing it and the head of the club to the weight of the ball. There is only ever a set distance that it's ever going to travel, and with gravity and all that, there's probably an equation out there that you can say this is the furthest balls are ever going to go. But then flip that, then you got then skill comes into it. And I'll tell you, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a golfer. So I'm like, I can hit a ball. I'm probably a little bit more along the lines of Happy Gilmore. Yeah, I can hit a ball, but I'm not a golfer.
Yeah.
But there's a skill element to it. Now you're going to be bringing skill and all that, and then on top of the skill, there's a mindset element to it. Do you have the skill? Do you want it? How hard are you prepared to train? And then I think all this extra stuff is going to come into it. How much are you prepared to put into everything else? The sleep, the not drinking with your boys every weekend. Yeah. The seeing the physios, the bodywork specialist, making sure that your biomechanics and your body is functioning at the highest level that it can be.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going through my head. Like the F1 comparison to where we are with the equipment, I have never thought about it that way. And it makes all the sense in the world because they scratch and scrape for every little aerodynamic improvement that might give them a tenth of a second. They're not going to get 4 or 5 seconds anymore. And we are a bit like that with equipment now.
In the golf world, yeah.
The equipment has gotten so good. So unless they change the limits on how fast we can make the club faces, and kind of like that with cars, like unless you can find 400 horsepower, how are you going to have that competitive advantage? Is
there a limit on the weight of the clubs?
Weight, there's not a limit as such, but there's an optimization of the size in cubic centimeters, the speed at which you kind of swing the golf club. So there's kind of like it'll be on a mountain of you get light enough, you'll go faster, get too heavy, you'll drop off. And then you're in the sweet spot of, well, we need it heavy enough that you can't deflect it easily when you don't hit it in the middle. So we need, and we need the ability to create some stability within the head, but we need speed at the same time. So they've kind of reached a lot of those limits now. Now, they're getting really good now with when you don't hit it perfectly, what does the club do then? That's what they're kind of doing really well now. They've 20 years ago, they optimized how fast it could be out the middle of the head. Now they're getting great at making off-center performance. But, I think the F1 comparison to it's less about the car, more about the driver is a brilliant one for golf.
I mean, that's what from my perspective, looking into the sport, I'm like, it really is a skill.
Yeah.
And I think that, golf carries a massive psychological component as well. That mindset is huge.
Yeah. And that's a podcast for you and I in itself, really. The ability to kind of manage yourself through it around the ups and downs, the highs and the lows. And I heard a word when I was a young assistant golfer trying to play tournament golf, and I was working with I guess you call him a performance coach, and he always said to Ian, he said, I want you to remain equanimous at all times. And I'm like, equanimous? He's like, yeah, equanimity is when you never get high, you never get low. He said, I want you to kind of just remain in the middle at all times. Hole a shot from 200 yards for eagle or albatross. Try not to let it change your state too much. Make a double bogey when, you're in contention and it puts you one behind. Try not to lose your shit about that either. So that equanimity is something, I don't really see that with a lot of golfers, and I can really pick the ones that I can think of on tour that have that about them. When you see them play, they're unflappable and they tend to perform. I just listened
to a podcast about that.
Yeah.
That the guys that are the best ones that are just, they're steady through.
They're always somewhere in the middle.
They're not up, they're not down. Yeah. It is just, it's that steady.
Totally.
And again, we can flip that and bring it back to health. Mindset's out the window if you're drinking.
Yeah.
If smoking, if you're eating wrong, and if your sleep's out of alignment, your mindset's going to be all over the place.
Well, I just done your survey, right? So, you gave me, we've done this a few times now, and, we do sort of like a review, and kind of when you answer that, you're kind of forced to look within a little bit and probably answer some questions that maybe are a little bit challenging at times.
Yeah, and when if I looking at the big spectrum, I send out 3 or 4 key ones to all my clients. Yeah. I think I sent you 2 or 3, but I'm looking for consistency through them. Yeah, because I tell you now, I've just had another set of questionnaires come in. One of them was all red. Yeah. And then look at the other one, it's all green. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not right. Like, there's something's off here. And either he's trying to answer the way I think he wants to answer. Exactly. And he's just tired and he's being honest here, or he's not understood the questions, or we're catching him out at this point. And let's have a real look into what's the truth. But I see that with a lot of them. But
isn't that the truth? Like you said there about golf, like golfers are that way. Golfers want to make themselves think they're doing the right things. They're doing enough. But if you really look within yourself, are you doing the right things and are you doing enough? And you're expecting improvements in performance. You're beating yourself up. What are you actually putting into it? Like, I think coming from maybe I don't know if it's a Scottish thing, but I always feel like you get the hard, cold truth. If I look at my dad or grandparents, I know I could go to them and they'd give me the cold. I'm not getting an arm around me and getting told what I want to hear.
Different culture, mate. Different times. Yeah. Different culture. We're living in a little bit of a sheltered. Yeah. A sheltered place. I'm very, with our kids at home, with my wife's kids, I'm very brutally honest with them. Yeah. And my wife gets really mad at me. And, they're at their age where they've got these big passions right now. And I'm like, don't put them on a pedestal if it's not a reality. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm a realist, I love jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to the worlds and I'm not going to be like the world's best, not a chance. But I'm going to compete at my level and I'm going to have fun doing it. But I think there's a lot of raw truths that we're from a generation that was a little bit like I forget what that saying is, better to be, what is it? Better to be slapped by the truth than kissed with a lie, something like that. Right, okay, yeah.
And
I'm like, I think we're just very...
So true.
Really fluffy today. Like we want anyone can do anything. I'm like, no, sorry, they can't. Yeah. Like that is not realistic. Not anyone. You can't be anything you want to be. And listen, I could never be a golfer. I don't think I'm designed for golf in any way whatsoever. Mm. But if my parents were telling me, yeah, you can be a golfer, you can do it, no, that's not the case. Yeah. But we do hold ourselves back as well at the same time. The ego is a real master of deception when it comes to that, and the psyche is a huge part with that golf game. It's a long game, and I played more tennis than I would associate to the golf thing. I would get in my head with tennis so bad that you lose one game, you lose 2 games, and you see it. Tennis players, they lose the game in the head, not in the physical element. And I wonder how there's probably a lot of that in the golf. And let's say with the people that are actually training and that are healthy and actually put that side out there, the physical side's not going to lose them the game. Completely. The head's going to lose them the game with that golf. Yeah, I've always felt like at the point where I can, from a physical standpoint, carry out the task, right, off the tee, with the irons, around the greens, at that point, it becomes a mental challenge. How do you hold it all together? How do you make the right decisions at the right time and all that sort of stuff? And, I think for so many golfers out there, they get stuck in the have to achieve physical perfection. Have to have the best looking. So I'm guilty of how does my swing look? And, I'm not, I'll have times where I hit it better, but I don't like what I see. And I'll have times where I like what I see and I'm not hitting it good. Like, which one should you be more happy with? Of course, the one that performs. Yeah. We should be built for go and not for show. And golf can be a little bit of a, people think they get points for the aesthetic. It's not, it's not synchronized, swimming or diving. I find the golf world very, very interesting. Yeah. It is in its own unique place in the world. It's an obsession. Yeah. I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, and he's always saying he will not play golf because he's obsessive and compulsive. He doesn't have the time for it. Right. But like Jamie is his wingman.
Yeah.
He's like hooked on it. And I see it. I've got like 50% of my clients are golfers.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And it's.
Yeah. And I'm exactly like that. I'm obsessive. You know, I have that kind of obsessive kind of way about me. And yeah, golf. That's what happened to me. You know, turned 16 years old, had never played golf really. My dad and I played on holiday, and that was it. That was literally it. 2 years later, I'd turned pro. And it was because I was obsessed. And people go, 2 years is a long time. Not when you put the amount of time I put into it within 2 years. I probably put someone else's 10 years in to the 2 years in terms of like I would, every time I got home from school, mum drive me to the course. And I'd be there until I couldn't be there. And then when I had my own car, I would literally have the same stories that players have of I would be on the practice area with the lights on in the car, shooting down the driving range because I didn't want to go home. You know, I still wanted to practice more. And
what's in your world in the golfing scene in Canada? What's the how many people on the average? How many times do people play a week in the summer?
I would say on average, golfers probably play on the average twice.
Like
I think there's a midweek round. Yeah, like I think at our club, they probably play like men's night on a Wednesday, and then they'll play Saturday or Sunday. I think that's kind of typical of the average golfer. Yeah, I would say about that. Maybe 40 rounds a year at their club, so roughly about twice a week. And
then winters, are they doing like golf trips in the winter, or are they?
Yeah, there'll be a golf trip now, and obviously indoor golf is exploding now. People are really looking at indoor golf. It's more time friendly. They can play the best courses in the world, you know, virtually. They can play with our boys. They can have the beers. You know, they can get the hot dogs in, and it's a nice way to kind of get that golf outlet that you miss out on in the wintertime. It's potentially, I think it could overtake outdoor golf. I do.
The winters here cheaper. Are hard, you know.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot cheaper. Golf memberships in Canada especially in Ontario, are a fortune.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally like, you join a course and, you know, you could quite easily put into it, quite easily. 10 a year on the membership. Yeah. I would say they're probably putting in 20 to 25 a year.
So this would be a question to your audience. How many of those guys put in that investment into a course are putting the same investment into their body?
None. None.
I mean, when I say on their body, not on beer.
Yeah.
Not on the beer and the hot dogs.
Not on the damage to the body.
How much are they putting into there? Yeah, I think is it LeBron that spends $6 million a year on his body care?
Yeah, I always heard the kind of like couple of million number with LeBron, and who's the player for the Eagles that started talking about this? I'm not a huge NFL guy, but someone Barkley. I forget. Case, you know who that is? The player. No, for the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles. It's one of their star players, and the people listening they'll be screaming it down the podcast. That it's like, you dummies. Begins with an S, but he's the one who Saquon Barkley. Apparently he spends, and I'll Google it in 1 second. Apparently he spends the most on like everything around health and wellness. So of his, I don't know, however much he gets a year, 50, million a year, whatever he gets, he dedicates, I think it's something like 5-6 million. So I think he says 10 to 15% goes into him.
Well, it's longevity, and again, 44 years old. My point in my world now is like, I want to be able to move beyond. I mean, listen, we're around the same age.
Yep.
When I was a kid, my parents were working to 50 to retire.
Right.
I'm 44. I'm a few years away from that. I ain't even thinking about retirement, let alone not working. I'm like, I just feel like I'm about ready to peak.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be retiring in a few years. But you've got to commit it from a longevity standpoint. And, with your sport, with golf, you can play golf up until the end. I've got a guy in jiu-jitsu, Greg. I think he's 69.
Right.
A lot of stuff he can't do. And he's probably not fighting 3 days a week for half an hour at the end of each kind of class. But he's there. He's doing it. And surfing. I got guys that are surfing to a long age. I'm like, don't neglect the body now. Don't neglect it when you're 20. Because most of us do. And like, I'm really trying to instill that into the kids and get into their training programs to educate the kids. I'm like, Don't trash your body in your 20s, especially in football, American football for the English listeners. But for the older people, the golfers, like put it into the body now. Stop paying attention, whether you're 30, 25, 40, 50, whatever it is. Invest in your body because you can be. Listen, I guarantee I could have a golfer playing up until the day they die.
It's compound interest, isn't it? It's the same thing. If you hear Tony Robbins or you hear any of the sort of really smart investment sort of professionals, they'll say, "Can you start when you're 18? Yeah. Can you start putting a little bit away when you're 18? You can start when you're 40 if you want." But you've missed 20 years of peak earning. Yeah. And that's where that compound interest makes a big part. And I think that's the way we should look at fitness and wellness is like we're compounding the interest and we will reap the rewards of that when we get into the latter part of our life. And
Matt, and that's a conversation that needs to be had with the kids.
Totally.
And the kids see how we live. We don't push it on the boys at all. Yeah. They see, we don't drink. We eat all organic. I'm going to bed at like 8:45, 9 o'clock. Oh, early. Sleep's my biggest.
Number one?
My number one.
Number one.
I can abuse my body with food and nutrition and have a glass of wine here and there. Not a problem. Sleep's my number one. But just trying to instill in the kids, I know I'm different at 44. Like you look at a lot of the other dads, none of them are training. Yeah. They're your weekend warrior golfers. Yeah. They've all got backache. They're all walking around with injuries. They're all walking around with like beer guts and they're just not feeling as good as they should be. Listen, I wake up and I'm like, let's go.
Like, I think everyone, and whether they do or don't, I mean, I don't know if this is the case. Maybe they inwardly do. But like, I think about it, like, I want people to look at me as a man in his 40s and look and go, hey, you don't look like you're in your 40s. Like I look at your, this might sound more feminine than two males having this conversation. Like I look at your skin, right? Yeah. Like looks as healthy as someone could be. Like when I meet someone, I'll look at their eyes.
Oh, their eyes in the skin.
And I'll be like,
with Christy, I'm like, they drink more than what they say.
100%.
Drinking and smoking shows age on the human body more than anything. Their tongue is a really big one. Their eyes, their hair, and their skin.
Totally.
Massive indication of health.
I always look at that with people and I'm like, I can kind of know what you're all about just by looking at some of those key indicators. And, you're always looking at that.
It's easy to see health. Yeah. And again, in my field, that's what I do. You look at someone's skin, you're like, you see a lot through the eyes, the tongue, the skin. Yep. Shows a lot about their health. I don't necessarily need them to give me a food journal. I can tell them that they're eating too much dairy and gluten and things like that. And
it's puffy and all that sort of inflammation.
You see it in the skin straight away. Yeah. But it is, you got to put it in now.
You have to.
For the long run.
That investment. How much time does a golfer, let's talk about a golfer specifically, how much time does a golfer have to spend to make a meaningful difference to their physical performance in golf? What can they do?
Okay, two avenues to this. Let's talk about the exercise first. Yeah. Then we'll talk about the lifestyle choices. Right. I've been thinking about this through this conversation. I'm going to say, listen, if I'm talking to the locals here, the people in North America that have winter, that are not playing golf all year round. If you're playing twice a week in the summer, I'm probably going to say maybe you could work out once or twice a week on top of that, max. Yeah. Like that's it. Everything else, like you can stretch at home, you can do whatever. You can thumper, roll, sauna, ice baths, awesome. Yeah. If you fall into the average of two games of golf a week, 2 workouts, 3 games of golf a week, probably less. Mm-hmm. I would just focus on the golf and your stretching and mobility. There's probably more investment outside of that. How much are you putting into your sleep? Yeah. And like you just said, the first thing I address with everyone is sleep. Yeah. Everything recovers when we sleep. Everything. And there's that 10 till 6 window, and there's been plenty of studies done. Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, all these books, Human Lab, like we've got all these things now. Oddly enough, Paul's been teaching this for 40 years. It's all now being backed by science, and people are paying a little bit more attention. Now. But there was the studies done on circadian rhythm, the cycle of the sun and the moon. And they took all these people that said they're night owls, and they took them into the middle of the desert, no phones, no nothing. every single one of them was fast asleep within 20, 30 minutes of the sun going down. So it dispels that truth of the archetype of the sleep. You know, you're a night owl, you're an early to bed. That's you've trained yourself to be a night owl.
I hope my mum's listening to this. This is exactly my mum.
Yeah. Oh, I've got really good Cheky friends that have really struggled with this. You know, one of my really good friends, you probably met George in the Les Mills studio.
Yep.
He was considered himself a night owl, but he said, like, looking back, he's like, I put myself into this through university. Mm-hmm. He's like, where I would force myself to stay up to get all my assignments done and then just sleep in. And he's like, you just reprogram that circadian cycle. You know, so that's a huge one with that. You know, how much time you actually putting into your sleep and your recovery. I think over 35, recovery should be your number one thing. You want to be putting more into your recovery than you are your training.
I think that's amazing advice. And I'm seeing more of that because as popular as ice baths and all these recovery things are, they absolutely pale away in significance when it comes to sleep. You can have as many ice baths as you want.
Sleep's the number one.
By a multiple.
I do not care what your supplements you take in, what needles you're sticking in your body, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
If you're not sleeping, you are not healing. And I'm talking on a global scale. Your brain, your organs, your skin, everything, the gut, everything's healing through that circadian cycle, that 10-6. You've got the psychological, the brain side of the repair, then the organ, and the physical, the muscle side of the repair. It is number one when it comes to health and wellness is sleep. You know, and I don't think that you might get the odd person that might want to argue with me on this, or I can get by in 4 hours sleep. I guarantee you can. Yeah. And I'll run your blood panels on you and tell you you're hanging on. Yeah. And I've just had a client phone me up from the States on this. He's like, they tell me I'm really healthy and my blood panels are fine. I'm like, I'm looking at your blood panels and you ain't fine. Yeah. Like your cortisol is flatlining, so you're not even responding to stress the way a normal body is. You're not sleeping. You're massively overweight and you can't lose weight. Like your hormones are dysregulated, and your doctors are telling that you're fine. Yeah, like sleep. We have to get the ultimately the number one thing is sleep and recovery. But you're right. Ice baths, great. If you're not sleeping, doesn't matter. Sauna's great. If you're not sleeping, doesn't matter. They're all tools.
It's a supplement on top of all. You know, if you get the foundation right and you do ice baths and you do some of the other red light stuff, great.
Sleep is the number one. And again, like I said, I can probably go 4 days eating bad food before I'm going to start feeling a little bit.
The
like
body
I'm probably going to wake up the next day and be a little bit puffy, and I'll be like, oh, I can feel it in my hands. It was my birthday the other week, and I had a glass of wine. First one in probably like over a year, and I woke up the next day after one glass of wine. My hands were puffy. Thank God I was skiing the next day and up a mountain, and it was cold and I was active. But
it's inflammation, isn't it?
Yes,
it is inflammatory to the body to consume. I mean, and listen, I come from the west coast of Scotland. Like it's our national sport.
Whiskey in the veins, mate.
But it's not until you get to the later stages of life that you start to realize that impact. Yeah, the impact that it has, and again back to looking at people.
Sleep.
You can tell.
Sleep is key. Listen, we're screwing it up with cell phones. We sit in our beds.
I'm the worst.
Blue light, TVs, blue light. So blue light dysregulates melatonin. Any blue light gives you a cortisol spike. So it tells the brain that the sun's still up. Yeah. And that's how that regulates the body. It stops melatonin production, doesn't stop it, turns it down, mutes melatonin production, puts that whole recovery system on hold. So, you know, there's things you can do. Blue light blocking glasses help. Everything, like you shouldn't be drinking coffee after 12 o'clock. You shouldn't be drinking any steam. 12 midnight.
Not midnight.
Not midnight. If you're drinking a coffee at night and going to bed, you got bigger problems. But put it that way. These people that tell me I can have a coffee after my dinner. Yeah. I'm like, that ain't good. That's a stimulant. If you can sleep with that much stimulant in your body, that tells me that the body is fatiguing. Like your cortisol, your adrenals, the kidneys are not working the way they should. And I always laugh because I just don't say anything anymore. You know, you're out with friends and things. Like, I just have a coffee. Yeah. I'm like, you're going to sleep? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, man. And this is, to come back to your first question, this is the investment. Like you want to play golf until the day you die. You want to play longevity side. Sleep is the one thing you want to dial in. Me and my wife have separate duvets because the male and the female self-regulate at a different temperature. We have all the windows are blacked out. We have separate duvets. We're in bed before 9 o'clock. Both the young boys are up past us, but they know we've got an internet switch off. So at a certain time, the internet switches off. I've got like the aero controller on my phone, so just switch the whole house off. And sleep is number one. You want to invest, start sleeping. And listen, we're in Toronto, all the city people. It's a bright light, big city. There's eating out, socializing. It's a very successful city. Like, all my clients are architects, lawyers, entrepreneurial, business, smart people. But you can't negate sleep. I will give you a glass of wine over like food, over anything else, like whatever, but sleep's got to start to become top priority. Then I'd probably move into the nutrition side of things. What are you eating? What does your week cycle of food look like? How much food are you eating? When are you eating? Are you breaking that eating cycle? Most people are eating as soon as they wake up till they go to bed. Again, Paul, we've been teaching this for 20, 30 years. Now there's common knowledge on intermittent fasting, not eating between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6, 8, 10 a.m., whatever it can be. The longer that break is, the better. Then the investment comes into the food. The training and the golf games, I'm like, you're going to get better if you put more into those two things because your body's going to perform better. Yeah. And no one wants, they're the harder things. They're not the fun things. You can't eat this, you can't drink that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. It gets a little bit draining when we've just been led to believe that all this fast food and sweet tasting stuff's good for you. It's not. It's killing you, and it's gonna put you in a state of injury where in Canada, North America, you have a back injury, you've lost 6 months, you've potentially lost a whole summer of golf. Yeah. I wonder how many people that how many of your clients are playing through a back injury just because they've got such a short window to actually play.
Well, I think back to the when I was club fitting, and we would have people flying in from out of town, and they've booked this like maybe 6 months out, and this is a kind of special occasion. It might be a big birthday or something like that. And the amount of times, Carl, we would get an email a few days before it. I really hurt my back, but I know how long it'll take me to get back into the booking system to have an appointment with Ian. I think I'll just come and do it. It would happen all the time. And then they would get there and they're like, yeah, I can't do this. And they've wasted, who knows how it happened, but they've wasted all of this sort of time and effort, investment in the new clubs, and they get to it and they physically can't do it.
You need to send them like a protocol, 6 week. Listen, this is advice for 6 weeks.
6 weeks is a great idea.
Come in the best position you can be in, so we get the best reflection of where you're at. Yeah. And it's I think we quote one of the studies done out of personal trainers that were questioned in San Diego. Like 2,000 trainers were questioned. How many of your clients are you training injured? 100% said yes.
Was it really?
There wasn't one. Now, not 100% of the clients, but 100% of the trainers said they had clients on a roster that they were working out injured.
Yeah.
80% of disc pathologies are asymptomatic. So in the golfing world, that's a lot. And I would really want to kind of like tap into that.
Yeah.
Meaning that they have a slip disc or a bulging disc with no pain.
Right.
And, you can see how people walk and how people carry themselves. Yeah. I can't say diagnose. I can see these in people's bodies where they've not even got a clue that it's there, but just the way they stand and posture, you can see, and I can recommend that they go and if they want to go that route. And
I remember the first assessment we ever done together, and we were doing sort of all the checks, and okay, top off, stand against the wall, and you do the kind of on the
plumb
dots,
line,
on the shoulders,
the plumb line set up,
and you're like, have you always sort of tilted so much to the left? And I'm like, no. I'm like, what do you mean tilted to the left? So you drew the two dots, and then you're like, come step away from the wall and look at this, and it's like one dot's down there and one dot's up there, and like I think I'm standing up perfectly straight, and I'm like
I just did an assessment today on a guy, and he's like, I've never realized how bad my posture is till I saw what you saw in the mirror.
Yeah,
I'm like, we got a bit to work on, mate. It's and again, like you can get nitpicky with this. Like you can come down to the millimeter of precision, and we're not looking for that. We're not looking for perfection. Right. You are looking for balance, especially in the human body. You don't want shoulder hikes. You don't want hip hikes. We all have a skeletal imbalance, like a muscular imbalance. We're all stronger on one side of the body. You know, you're either right-handed or you're left-handed. You have a lead.
Right.
Golfers are probably one of the worst. Anyone that has a rotation pathway because you're swinging in one direction all the time. Golfers, tennis, baseball, people that work on a kiosk in a shopping.
Yeah.
And like
always going
anything
down.
that's that consistent one-sided rotation will start to build up that dominance. And that's the path to injuries, to just get built up on one side, a little bit looser on the other. You've always got opposites. What's long and weak on one's going to be short and tight.
Yeah.
So what you're building up on one side, you're going to create a long weakness on the other side if you're not correctively addressing that in like the programming. And that's where we fall in as Chek practitioners. Like, we're not trainers. Like, we're not rent-a-friend and count the reps for people.
Yeah.
We want to I don't want to work with someone forever. I've got a couple of clients that I do that with, but one of them's like my client that I've lost a ton of weight with me, and we've gone through back injuries together where he couldn't put shoes on for years, you know, and now we've gotten to a point that he just will not trust anyone else. One of my other clients, Dave's sister, like, she broke her back skiing 2 years ago. She just went skiing this year. And, you know, they would tell you never skiing again. You got to be in traction for like 6 weeks to 6 months. I'm like, no, you're not in traction. You're getting up. Your back's fine. Like, yeah, it's broken, but it's fine. Like, she sent me all the scans and the reports. We've got to get you moving. We've got to strengthen. We've got to stabilize. And we moved her through it. And the doctors couldn't believe that she was walking as fast as what she was, and let alone going and skiing in Utah for 2 weeks. She just got back from skiing in like Utah.
I think that's the scary part for me, Carl. And in the health and this kind of health space right now is, it seems to me that we trust the health system less than ever before. I wonder why, you know, after recent times. But it seems to me like the sort of holistic, you know, health and wellness practitioners are the ones that we're seeking out now, you know, to look at it from a you know, well-rounded, multifaceted, you know, lots of different angles as to how we can be better. Is that how you see things moving in the future? You know, much less reliant on your family doctor? I
do see that. I don't want to see that. I want to see them merge together, and it's never going to happen.
I know.
I would love to see a merge where the East meets the West.
Yeah.
You know, there's like there's a really good book called Eastern Body, Western Mind.
Wow.
And it merges those two things together. It shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't be called a healthcare system. Listen, we need the medical system, and I can't fix bones. I can't heal cancer. I can't heal disease. That's what the healthcare system is there for. Unfortunately, it's being strained at a massive rate. A whole other conversation that's down to metabolic disease is the biggest strain on that. They're also not trained in health. Like, and again, I got family doctors. Like, my wife's brother's a doctor. I've got really good friends that are doctors. They're not trained on the biomechanics of a moving body. They don't look at a body off of a gurney, like a table. Their entire education system is done on a body on a gurney, not a functional moving body. Yeah. You know, they do spend no time on nutrition. They don't look at the functionality of health and wellness. They treat disease. They're constantly looking at sick people. So when your education is based off of treating sickness and disease, that's all you know. So there's a need for that. But now there's a big need for we do want to be, but like we've just talking before we got on, I run labs for people. This is where the break is. People shouldn't have to come to a private functional lab specialist. This is the Brecker, like the world of the Gary Brecker, who's like the big name right now at the moment. Saved Dana White's life, saved a lot of people's lives through running labs. But you have to seek that off of your own financial gain. So there's a class system there with that. But people are seeking out the health and the wellness people because we're in the field. Like, I've been doing it now for 25 years. You know, it's part of my life. Like, I have the degrees that I have from school, which I don't use to this day at all. Then the training through the Chek system, training through the FDM world, the metabolic typing, the nutritionist, the blood typing, like combining all that together, and you get my experience from that of 25 years. So people are seeking out health. People are now seeking out the professionals. The downside, there's a lot of nonsense on social media. Yeah, there's a lot of pretty guys and pretty girls that just get traction from looks alone that are just speaking nonsense. And it's infuriating because I know a lot of people that are very intelligent that just can't get that leg up. And I'm like, you need to get naked online. But we need a merge. But there is that division. People are seeking out the functional labs, like what kind of reconnected is. Again, we started talking about some of the functional lab side of things. Yeah. And people are being made aware to that. Like, I look at a blood panel very differently to the way a doctor looks at a blood panel.
Right.
They're going to compare you to the general population.
Yeah, here's what the average person looks like. You're a little bit above that. Who wants to live there? I don't want to be in the average population. The average population today has 2 to 3 cofactors of, like, this was the whole thing with COVID. You know, the death rate came from a lot of the comorbidities that were tied to that. You know, how many people are overweight, inactive, smoke, pre-diabetic, you know, all these factors which play into that. I for sure as hell don't put my numbers in there. I want to be the best of the best of the best for me. What does that look like? Don't compare me to the eye shot of the general population. And that's where we differ in that realm. We look at, no, okay, this is what they're going to tell you should be. When I look at it, this is where you should be. You know, I looked at yours and, you know, you were told it was fine. I'm like, that's not my interpretation of this. You probably need to supplement X, Y, and Z and do this. I would love to see a merge. I don't think there's ever going to be a merge. You know, once they have you in the healthcare system, you're kind of trapped. Yeah. And again, I don't think anyone goes into it with that malice intent. It's just, it's a business. It's the system. It is a business. That's ultimately,
Yeah.
It's designed for that.
Sickness is what keeps them in business and in profit. Sadly, you know, I had one of my clients yesterday saying, like, they kept trying to push her for surgery, but she knew surgery wasn't the only answer. And she's now come to me and I'm like, that's the last thing I would tell you to do. I'm like, there's so much you can do around this. But sadly, you've got to be your own leader in that sense. You've got to seek out the professionals. And there's phenomenal people around there. Be very cautious of, you know, do your research, do your background. You know, it makes me laugh when I see these 18, 20-year-old life coaches. I'm like, what experience do you have right now? Like, I'm sorry, like, you got no experience, but I know. But within the health world, don't write off the healthcare system. There's going to be at some point you're going to need it. Right. Like I said, oils and meditation don't fix a broken bone. Yeah. You know, but the medical system's not going to take you to your peak performance. And listen, let's not be wrong. My peak performance at 44 is not going to be what it was at 22. Yeah. You know, I'm tempted to take testosterone to get myself back to that, but it's not going to come without that my own path of self-discovery and seeking out those professionals.
You've really got to have a curious mind, don't you? And want to seek it out. It's not as readily, call it, available as the healthcare system is, and it's certainly not from a cost perspective supplemented the way the healthcare system is. And I feel like that's a big thing for people is if they even do go down that route and they look at it, they'll look at the cost of it and go, oh, no, I can't do that. Yeah. They'll immediately look at it and go, no, it's too much. But back to the investment side of it, what is the other side of that? How much would you pay to not be sick once you're really sick? Yeah. What would you pay?
That's the big question.
That's the black check.
How much would you pay? You know, we've both coming off of illnesses. Like me and my wife are like, oh my God, it just feels you become very grateful that you're healthy. Like, what's the cost of being sick? I had clients that would always come and nickel dime me. Yeah. You know, and there's one that always sticks in my mind. I've probably told you this story before, where he pulls in one day in the brand new Mercedes G-Class. Yeah. Bought his 16-year-old, 17-year-old daughter, like, the Mercedes sports wagon, and he bought himself a Maserati. And then he's like, but you're going to give me a deal for my son to come and train with you through the summer. And I'm like, no, like, that's the biggest investment you should be putting in. He's like, you and your kids and your family's health. It's like, give me your car for the summer then, sure. I'll train him for free. Let me have your car. Like, you know, people's priorities around health is shot. Yeah. They'll spend, again, let's talk Toronto. People will spend $200 on a night out. Like, I think the average dinner's got to be what, $150 in Toronto?
I don't know if you're out with your other half. I don't know if you're escaping.
I'm talking, like, let's just say just you. It's got to be what, $150 per head.
Per head.
So if it's
easy,
let's say
150 to 200 per head.
150 to 200
for sure.
People don't even batter an eyelid at spending that, and I'm like, let over a month, that's $800. That's $800 into a bigger investment into your life. And I'm not telling people, listen, don't go out and eat and don't like enjoy yourself. There's got to be a balance. But why do you question spending $800, $1,000 a month on your own body?
Yeah,
on a right supplementation, on a right, just little things, just like a red light unit.
Yeah,
you can get the little handheld ones or the big. Listen, they can go thousands, but you can start off small. A thumper, like a good self-massage system.
Yeah. Foam
roller, an ice bath. You can buy the tubs that I've got and built my own ice bath around it for less than $1,000.
Right.
I didn't want to spend.
I got to pick your brain on that one.
What's the point in spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on a bath? You can make your own for $1,500.
Yeah.
Things like that. There's these sauna blankets that you can now get. Like, there are so many investments that you can do that add to that. Let's look at like your debit system as opposed to the credit system. But everyone's quick and easy to get the credit card out, but they don't want to put it in, and that's the mindset that needs to change. I don't think we're going to merge the healthcare systems. We need the sick care system. It's got its place. The doctors in that world are very well trained at treating disease.
Yeah.
Some of them are really well trained. I keep bringing Joe right. There's a lot of people that he interviews, a lot of good doctors. There are really good doctors out there that are a little bit more health conscious and health aware. The whole methylene blue thing.
Sure.
That's the thing right now that everyone's talking about it, and it's been around for years.
Yeah.
I've been using it like on and off for years with red light, and now all the studies are coming out over the benefits of it. But how many doctors are going to look at that?
Mm-hmm.
And like say, well, listen, we've got this thing. Why don't you try that instead of putting you on an antidepressant? Because the improvement of the mental health with the methylene blue and red light is astronomical.
Right.
But how many doctors are going to say, let's maybe not put you on an antidepressant or an anxiety med. Why don't you try this? Why don't you change your diet? Why don't you sleep?
Yeah. I remember telling my my doctor about Inside Tracker and blood work, and I'm doing all this stuff to look at optimization, and I showed her the results, and she was looking at me like, I have no idea what you're showing me right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is all my certain blood markers. She's like, yeah, I don't know what these are.
Yeah, they're trained to look at a very narrow tool system. And I had the same thing with my wife's brother, because I was working with a client that's young lad, bedbound, couldn't move. I was running a load of these labs trying to figure out, and I was sending them to him, and he's like, I have not got a clue what these mean. He's like, I don't know that. We're not trained that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, this is out of my wheelhouse. And it's the way the medical system is. And listen, I work with clients all around the world. It's the same in Australia. Yeah. It's the same in England, Scotland, in Europe. It's the same in America, and it's the same in Canada. Mm-hmm. The healthcare system serves a disease state, a sickness state. And again, don't get me wrong, we need that.
Yeah.
Do not go to them for health. Look at the person that you're going to I want people to look up at me, and like the kids to look up at me at 44 and be like, yeah, I can still walk around my shirt off.
Totally.
And I can still go smashing jiu-jitsu. I can run with them. And like, they're at that age where they think they can beat me in a running race.
Yeah.
I've maybe got one more summer. I've maybe got one more summer where I can still beat them.
Yeah.
But I want them to look up and be like, 45 is not old.
Yeah.
Because my dad at 45, 50 was an old man. He needed to retire. He was done. You've got to seek it out, unfortunately. There's got to be a little bit of investment. And I'll tell you this. Golf is one of those sports where they'll invest. And again, like if I said to you, we could put 10, 20, 30, 40, up to 100 yards on everyone's drive, every average golfer's drive, by changing their biomechanics, changing their diet, changing the way they live, and like that side of things, that investment in that, like, you're going to change your whole life.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Okay, guys. So, I mean, this is something that I feel like we've just scratched the surface on these topics. I mean, we've got a lot to unpack when it comes to lifestyle and fitness around, our 6 pillars. And I'll be honest, it was probably when I made the pillars, it was the one that had to be in the Fraser Golf Institute, because I love that people can play better golf, but I want people to live a happier, more fulfilled life. And you can't do that if you're sick. You can't do it if you're unwell. You can't do it if you're always battling physical or mental, illness. And we sort of repair ourselves, or we recover from within. And, I think all the surface level things that we do to improve ourselves is great, like we talked about with the ice bath and stuff like that. But, let's get the core fundamentals right and wait till you see what that does to your golf game. And we are still talking about golf. When we're talking about all this stuff, make no mistake that we're getting sidetracked talking about health and the healthcare systems and stuff like that, because if you don't think that how your health will affect how your performance comes the weekend or come your Wednesday game, and you're dealing with a sore shoulder, or you're having to rub, topicals on yourself to get yourself through the round, and you become to the point where you think that's normal. That's not normal. Like you said to me, recently about sort of, all this congestion that I've been suffering with for months, it's become normal. It's like, don't accept that, because it's not normal. Your body should not be reacting this way. We'll figure it out. And, a lot of the topics we're talking about today, guys, that's the same thing. And hopefully this resonates with a lot of you out there, that there's things that Carl brings in his skill set are truly transformational. They are life-changing for so many people. And I hope this has maybe been a little bit of a stimulant to you, that you can do something to help yourself or a family member or, a friend, whoever it might be. If you've heard something today that kind of, goes, yeah, that sounds like something I've been suffering with for far too long. Maybe this is what you needed to hear to give yourself that message that you can do something about it, and you don't have to just suffer and just, have the sort of life sucked out you because of how you feel on a day-to-day. There are things you can do to really help.
That's been the feed of my Instagram reels for the last couple of reels that I've put up. Like, it's not normal.
Yeah.
Do not accept anything as normal that takes you away from feeling the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And your body will tell you, won't it?
Oh, yeah.
If you listen and you're in tune with the body, it will give you the clues.
Hands down.
Yeah, without a doubt. Guys, first of many with Carl, it's been well, first and foremost, a friendship that I'm so grateful for, but it's been amazing to have you in as one of the very first core guests on the Golf Asylum. Guys, you can find Carl. We'll post all of his social media. Raven Wellness is Carl's company. We'll post the website. We'll post his Instagram. We'll be reposted on our Instagram. So if you want to connect, and if you want to sort of come to some sort or get to some meaningful answers as to why maybe you are struggling with certain things in your life, I would absolutely, recommend you reach out to Carl. I know within this menu of services, you've got, you'll do a 15-minute consultation with people, just seeing if there's a good fit and if there's something you can help with. And then beyond that, you can sort of figure out. But, there's yourself, and if it's someone else locally who's part of the Chek faculty or beyond, I know that you'd never be shy in sharing sort of other people who you think might be a great fit to help people. But I think one thing you and I share, Carl, is we are passionate about helping people. We want to see people in the best version of themselves.
25 years of my life trying to help, trying to teach and help people realize that there's more. There is. There are answers, and it's not just what they're being told.
Without a doubt. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, pleasure. Hopefully we'll get some good questions coming in on where we want to direct it. Like anything around the sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, or the mindset, bring them in, and we'll take it on next time.
Take a deep dive. That's a great point. Let us know. This is all about your feedback. Let us know if there are topics you want us to dive into specifically. We've covered a general sort of range in topics there today. So whatever you guys want us to dive into, we'll make that part 2 of this series.
For sure.
Love it. All right. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you again soon.